Today, let's step into the shadows of a Gothic manor because we're going to trace the chilling lineage of a single, really powerful idea. And that idea? It's the very nature of vexation itself. So, where does our story begin? Well, it's not with some monster jumping out of the dark. No, it starts with an observer. Picture this, a steward, quietly polishing silver in this grand, decaying manor. And he starts to notice something is deeply wrong with his master. It's not that he's going mad, not exactly. It's something much more fundamental. You could call it a sickness of language. The words themselves are just failing. And that brings us right into our first act, a loss of tongue. You see, the steward, he's going to be our guide through all this. And from his perspective, this haunting isn't some ethic battle for a soul. Nah, it's a battle for meaning. It's this linguistic decay that's almost infecting the very air of the house. So to get a handle on what's happening, the steward starts by looking for a grand, sophisticated kind of culprit. He's thinking of an evil that's almost worthy of the stage. And that brings us right to Act 2, the spirit of negation. Okay, so the steward's first suspect. It's a pretty philosophical one. It's the Geist der Verneinung. Now, what is that? Well, think of it like a very well-dressed, very dramatic guest sitting in the master's drawing room, debating the futility of existence. This is that big, capital D devil from Goethe's Faust, a cosmic force whose entire job is to just say no to all of creation. It's this very abstract, almost intellectual kind of evil. And this spirit, it speaks in high verse, Its rebellion is massive, cosmic, a grand denial of life itself. But then the steward looks at his master's actual problems, the petty frustrations like a snapped quill or spilled ink, and he just realizes, you know what? This grand devil, it doesn't fit. The haunting in this house feels so much smaller, way more intimate, and far more personal. So this means the steward's investigation has to go deeper. He's got to dig back, way back, into the dirt and blood of language itself, which leads him straight into Act 3, the visceral vexation. And this is where it gets really interesting. The steward starts to trace the word's terrifying journey. It travels all the way from that philosophical German word Verneinung, which means to deny, back to its guttural Old English ancestor, grimmen, meaning to vex. And the difference here? It is absolutely profound. One denies that the world exists at all. But the other one poisons your soul until you are the one who wishes the world away. So that sophisticated guest is gone, replaced by this dirt-stained demon of the self. Let's go back to the 11th century for a second. Back then, grimmen wasn't just some idea. It was a physical sensation. It meant to literally stir your blood into a grim state, a fierce state. There was no distance, no separation. To be provoked was to be physically altered, like having a nest of hornets stirred up right inside your mind. And this is the raw, earthbound terror the steward believes is what's really at work here. So this creature's whole method, its MO, it isn't direct destruction. It's all about internal provocation. It's not going to break your tools, it's going to break your composure. Because it knows that a far, far greater ruin happens when you are the one who provides the fury for your own downfall. And this realization, it leads the steward to his big epiphany in Act 4, a manor haunted by verbs. He realizes the true haunting isn't supernatural at all. It's linguistic. The manor isn't filled with ghosts, it's filled with actions. Think about it. Every creak of the floorboards is a provocation. Every shifting shadow is a vexation. The house itself has become this engine of agitation, perfectly designed to grimian everyone inside. As he digs deeper, the steward finds this old story, the parable of Ethelwulf. He's a scholar who's being plagued by this little soot-stained creature, a wight. And it doesn't attack him, not directly. It just makes his work impossible. Spills his ink, snuffs his candles. And then Ethelwulf realizes with this dawning horror, the creature is feeding on his rage. The very moment he stops getting agitated, the wight starts to starve. And it's not a one-off. The exact same lesson pops up in the story of Alric the Smith. This gnarled creature is vexing him while he's trying to forge a sword, just feeding on his anger. And guess what? The blade only cracks when he strikes out in pure fury. But when he makes a choice to calm himself, to sing to the metal instead of curse it, the creature actually shrinks, and he forges a masterpiece. It's like the grimian itself is confirming this parasitic relationship. Your anger,
It's not a weapon you can use against it. It's the very thing that gives it life. We are, at the same time, both the victim and the host.
Which brings us to the fallout. You know, how this ancient terror has kind of evolved into the persistent, everyday irritations of our own lives. And that's Act 5, the smallest no. So the steward looks back on this whole linguistic journey, and he comes up with this really powerful metaphor. He says that by domesticating that grand spirit of negation, by turning it into a minor gremlin, we basically invited a wolf into our house, thinking it was just a dog. We completely mistook its nature. And now, in our moments of weakness, it reveals its teeth. Think about it. We're not really wrestling with cosmic devils anymore, are we? Instead, we're facing this constant, nagging vexation of the mundane. You know, the slow Wi-Fi, the keys you can never find. That grand negation just became a nuisance. But in doing so, it became completely inescapable. And it just goes to show you, sometimes the smallest, most persistent no is the loudest one of all. And all of this brings the steward to his final, chilling conclusion in our last act, the unbridled ire. So he sets down his polishing cloth, and there's this bleak finality to it. He realizes that this whole journey through etymology, this act of naming the demon, it doesn't actually solve the problem. Just because he understands where the gremlin came from, that doesn't give him or his master any power over it. In fact, the steward realizes that the entire history of the word, from gremlin all the way to gremlin, is nothing more than a history of our own self-deception. We invent these external creatures, these wights, these phantoms, these gremlins, to avoid a much more terrifying truth. And the truth is, the monster is simply our own unbridled anger. So this whole journey through language brings us right back to where we started, in a dark room with a human heart that is just so easily provoked. The gremlin isn't some ancient demon from the 11th century. It's the reflection of the impatience and frustration that we all choose to carry around with us. Which leaves us with one final unsettling question to think about. What do you call the shadow that you feed